Welcome back to another episode of Adventure News, and it's safe to say that this year the big international motorcycle shows really spoiled us for choices in the off-road world. Last year was a massive disappointment. This year is the complete opposite. We've got so many fantastic bikes to talk about. I'm really excited. Let's just dive straight in. And we're going to start with the Honda NX500. This is basically a refresh or an update and a rebrand of the CB500X. There aren't any significant changes to the motor, the chassis, the main components of the bike. It's still a CB500X. What it does have is a fresh new look, which I think looks fantastic. I love the look of this. It also has new wheels and it also has a TFT dash. So you could be in two categories here. One category is you could be very excited about this, the refresh of the CB500X. If you've been on the market for a small adventure bike, this certainly does look fantastic and it will still be great value for money, and it's still got that Honda reliability. So you could be very happy with yourself that they finally brought the CB500X into a more of a modern era with all of those features. However, on the other hand, you could also be very frustrated with Honda. It's another year where they haven't put spoke wheels on this bike and given it decent suspension to make it a little more off-road capable, especially considering that they've given it the NX name. And giving it the NX name might imply to a lot of people that, hey, we're making this more off-road capable. And that's not what you're getting with the CB500X, which has caused a lot of frustration in the community. I wholeheartedly understand. Rally Raid are probably very thankful that it's never happened, because they're probably killing it with their pack where you can get proper suspension, spoke wheels for the bike, because Honda just refuses this to customers. Now, a few of you have pointed out, well, it might be a bit too close to the Transalp 750, and I would agree. Now in this current point, yes, it would be. And with that better suspension and spoke wheels, the price would go up. And then you're asking yourself, what's the point? But Honda have had this chance for a long time and have just not done it. So I think for those people wanting the 500 with those capabilities, it's just been a frustrating journey. But I still like what Honda have done with the looks. I think it looks great aesthetically. But if you are looking for a kind of a dual adventure bike with a little bit of off-road capability, and the CB500X has been on your wish list just with spoke wheels and decent suspension, it's another year of disappointment. I'd love to know your thoughts, so chuck them down below. The two big bikes that really got a lot of people excited, set the internet on fire, is the CFMoto 450 MT as well as their MTX. Let's start with the smaller bike, the 450 MT. This has a lot of features that people have been crying out to the Japanese and European brands, and they've just been refused. I can understand why they're so excited that the manufacturer has finally listened to them and made a bike that could really be quite appealing to someone looking for a decent adventure bike in a small capacity. Now, what makes this bike stand out? Well, it's basically the bike that Honda refuses to make with the CB500X. It's a 450cc parallel twin with that very important 270-degree crank motor. One of the things that always didn't really entice me about the CB500X and a lot of conventional engines is it just doesn't have the engine note and the power characteristics that really engage you and that I really love. I'm a petrol head. I love the sound of a good motor. Now, that is subjective, but I think a 270-degree crank on a parallel twin is just one of the best sounding motors on the planet. This motor is going to be very engaging and fun to ride. Also, that firing order is really great for an adventure bike, as it gives you that V-twin characteristic, low-end grunt, as well as being very useful for off-road applications. So a lot of people are happy about that. But as well, you've got spoke wheels. Not only that, they're tubeless. Those spoke tubeless wheels are also a 21/18 setup, so the best setup for off-road application. It's claiming to make 44 horsepower and 44 Newton meters of torque, so not world-shattering numbers, but that means it will fit into most learner-graded systems in the world. So Europe, Australia, countries like that, this bike will be able to be used by entry-level riders, which is a very intelligent move. It means they'll be able to sell a lot of these bikes. Now, the thing that's been catching a lot of people's eyes is the claimed 175 kilograms. What you need to know about that weight is that is the dry weight. Once you put fluids, petrol in that big 17-litre tank, it brings you up to the mid 190 kilos, so that's on par with the CB500X. And one of the things that comes with that weight, while it isn't light enough to chuck around in the really hard stuff, it does make it a great adventure tourer, meaning it's quite stable out on the open road. Now, that is a little frustrating on the weight side that it isn't lighter and can't move into that unicorn kind of parallel twin adventure bike slash rally bike that a lot of people have been wanting. But I think the package you are getting here is really impressive. I'm really looking forward to getting a leg over this bike and seeing what it's all about. The only hold up here is where it's made in China. I think if you're worried about quality control, this is going to be one of the better offerings out of China. The other reason I would put a bit of stock in CFMoto over other Chinese brands is their close relationship with KTM. They own a portion of the Pierre Mobility Group, the group that includes KTM, Husqvarna, Gas. They also make the motors for a lot of KTM's motorcycles nowadays, and they share a lot of technologies. KTM have put their faith in this group, and they obviously can make components up to KTM's reliability and quality standards. They have the capability to make some very impressive motorcycles. So I think reliability wise, this is probably going to be our best chance yet of getting a decent motorcycle out of China. The whole ethical side of it, I'll leave up to you. I'm not here to make any political statements, but I'd certainly understand if that's a consideration for you too. So I'd love to know your thoughts. This looks like a very impressive adventure bike from CFMoto. There's not really many specs to talk about because it is a concept bike, so a lot of this could change if it ever reaches production. What you're basically looking at here is the LC8 motor, and it could potentially be also some of its chassis. What's the LC8 motor? It's the motor that's in the 790 KTM and the 890 KTM. This looks like it's born out of the relationship with KTM. CFMoto produces those motors for KTM. Makes sense that they would use it in their own motorcycle. You can even see low slung petrol tanks as you would see on the 890 Adventure R. So this could very well be a more affordable version of the 890 if you want to look at it that way. Me personally as well, I think this looks a hell of a lot better as well. The other shocker here is all the premium componentry bolted to this bike. It's just not stuff you usually see on Chinese motorcycles. We associate that with cheap and poorly made, whereas this stuff is very, very premium stuff. It'll be interesting to see if that makes it to the production model, and that certainly will jack up the costs, but it will also be equally interesting to see how much this undercuts the KTM 890 Adventure R and whether that savings is reason enough for you to jump ship from Team Pumpkin. Next up, we've got Beta's Alp 4.0 and 4.0X. This is an update to the Alp series, and it has some very interesting features that I think will get a lot of people excited. Namely the 35 horsepower, the claimed dry weight of 140 kilos for the Alp 4.0, which is the more off-road capable version, which also comes with a 2118 wheel setup. And then the X, which is the more road-orientated version, comes with a 1917 wheel combo. Now, of course, with an 11-litre tank and all the fluids in it, that is going to drag it from 140 kilos into probably the mid 150 kilos. But what you're getting is a 350 single cylinder making a claimed 35 horsepower in a bike that looks to be fairly off-road capable and also fairly approachable for learners as well. So if you were looking for a 300 rally but it just didn't have quite enough punch for you, this could be a very interesting option. It still has the single cylinder, still will be fairly lightweight, especially compared to the small displacement adventure bikes on the market. It's going to have a significant weight saving over those. This could be a really interesting contrast to the Honda CRF 300 Rally. While it doesn't have quite the same wind protection and isn't as off-road capable, at least from the spec sheet that I'm reading, what you are getting is a significant bump in power if the claimed power is correct. A complaint from a lot of riders with the 300 Rally is that they love the bike. The only letdown is that it could do with a little bit more power, which this Alp 4.0 has. I'm not entirely sold on the looks of the 4.0. The 4.0X looks fine to me, but the 4.0 does look a little weird to me. That suspension has me a little worried. So if you go into this with open eyes, knowing that the suspension isn't going to be made for spirited riding and extreme terrain, then I think this could be a great, interesting option for you if you want something a little different with more power than a 300 Rally. I'd love to know your thoughts on the 4.0 and X as well.
Start it up.
This Benelli BKX300 really looks quite fantastic. And if you think the BKX looks familiar, that's because it was released in a 250 form at last year's motorcycle show. So we've got a single cylinder liquid cooled motor at just under 300 cc's, making a claimed 29.5 horsepower and 24.5 Newton meters, being mated to a 6-speed gearbox. If that sounds familiar, that's almost dead on with the power characteristics of the WR250R, so that is a great place to start. Also, that power is made at 9,000 RPM, so it is very revvy, just like the WR250R motors. This has 41mm forks with 180mm of travel, or 7.1 inches, and it's only adjustable for preload at the rear. You've got a seat height of 837mm, or 32.9 inches. A 1917 wheel combo. Benelli have stated that they're planning to release a 21-inch model variant onto the market as well for the people that want more off-road capability. And lastly, we're looking at a wet weight of 165 kilos or 364 pounds. So certainly not the lightest when you think of it as a dual sport, but when you look at that fairing, it definitely is in that similar category to the CRF300 Rally, where it's giving you more wind protection. The big question for me always with Benelli is the quality going to be there? Because they're basically a satellite Chinese company at this point. The other question I have is performance here. While I loved those power characteristics on the WR250R, it only weighed 135 kilos. So you could have a whole lot of fun on that bike, keep ahead of traffic, wring its neck out, but still not lose your license. It's a big weight deficit over the WR250R. I'm wondering whether it will hide that weight well and it will be as much fun to ride as a WR250R, or whether it will be too much for that little motor to overcome. Now that it is released, now that we have all the specs confirmed, what do I think about this bike? Well, I'm quite excited to see this bike hit the market. I think Royal Enfield have done a really great job of giving features and specifications on a bike with a decently affordable price tag. Now, I know there is a subset of riders that are really disappointed that this isn't ultra lightweight in the same weight class as a CRF300 Rally, but that was never what this bike was going to be. Royal Enfield aren't really the manufacturer to look to for lightweight motorcycles, at least not yet. This isn't in their development strategy. A little piece of me is disappointed, as I always want to see bikes as light as possible to maximize that off-road capability. But Royal Enfield understand their market here. They're wanting entry-level riders or riders stepping up from the 411 Himalayan. They want an easy to ride, approachable motorcycle, durable, has decent off-road capability, it's simple, but has adventure bike characteristics with a dual sport heart. And that's exactly what it looks like you get with this Himalayan 452. So I think it's going to make most Himalayan riders and those looking at the 452 very, very happy. What I love is that all the rumors and the claims turned out to be true. This makes 39.5 horsepower, which I think is bang on for that size motor. It's going to have approachable power characteristics, great off-road capability, that wind protection with that nice screen, and you've got all the features you'd want with a TFT dash as well. I think just like Norley, I'm quietly impressed, at least specifications wise so far. I can't wait to get a leg over myself, but I'd love to know your thoughts. Are you a little disappointed in that weight being around 196 kilos, or are you happy with the rest of the features and you weren't expecting an ultra lightweight motorcycle out of Royal Enfield? The big claim for this bike, which is currently a concept at the moment, is 183 kilograms wet. I'm very, very skeptical about that, and here's why. I don't mean to burst your balloon, because a lot of people are excited about this bike because finally they're thinking a lightweight mid-capacity adventure bike well below the 200 kilo mark. Now you've got to ask yourself this question: if it can be done and done fairly easily and affordably, why hasn't Yamaha done it with the T7? Why hasn't Suzuki done it with the V-Strom? Why hasn't Honda done it with the Transalp? Why hasn't KTM done it with the 790 and the 890? The answer is it is doable, but it just means it'd be astronomically expensive because the number of lightweight parts you would need to bolt onto that bike, all the engineering required to get it that light, it would make it a very, very pricey motorcycle. On top of that, you've also got a few points that make this very unlikely that the wet weight is ever going to be true. The reason being is that this Kove 800 is basically using the KTM 790 or 890 motor that CFMoto produces. So the question you've got to ask yourself then is, Do you think Kove have the ability and the technology to make a bike lighter than the KTM 790 Adventure at a lower price? Because the KTM 790 Adventure actually is 189 kilos dry, so it is very difficult, I think, for a manufacturer borrowing this motor with lower quality materials and less production capability and engineering and R&D investment to make a bike lighter than the KTM 790 Adventure with the same motor. I think while that is in the realm of possibility, it is highly unlikely, and I kind of think this is porcupines at this point. Kove are likely giving you a number that will really catch the eye, get as much attention as possible on it so that you will follow its development. I'd love to be wrong on this. I'd love for Kove to surprise me, but I'd love to know your thoughts as well. The 698 Mono from Ducati has been released and it's got some very tasty features indeed. We're looking at 77 horsepower out of Ducati's first single in a very long time. It can be bumped up to just over 84 horsepower with an aftermarket track pipe on it. 162 kilograms wet, which is very impressive. Of course, the 6-speed gearbox, quick shifter. What I love is it has a wheelie assist, so a lot of bikes come with wheelie control to stop them lifting up the front wheel. But no, good old Ducati, they've got wheelie assist where it helps you lift the front wheel. Of course, being a motard, that's exactly what you want. There will be a detuned version of the 698, which means it will be learner legal in Europe as well as Australia. Now, you might be scratching your head thinking, why the hell am I talking about a motard on an off-road based channel? The reason I'm so excited is that this bike has been made specifically to go to head with KTM 690 SMC motard, which is a fantastic bike in its own right with very similar specifications. One of the primary features of that 690 SMC is that it's a modular platform, so it is also the bike that becomes the 690 Enduro with a few different tweaks. Seeing as how they basically aim directly at KTM with this 698 Mono, you would therefore hope that Ducati have plans to put spoke wheels and longer travel suspension on this 698 Mono, and hey presto, you've got a high performance premium dual sport to go head to head with the KTM 690 Enduro. Variety is the spice of life, more competition breeds more competition. I'd love to see the 698 with these features with spoke wheels and long travel suspension to be able to hit the dirt. It would be an absolute hoot. Finally, I wanted to close with Triumph's new MX bike that has just been released. It looks like a very premium MX bike. It's a 250, they're claiming it weighs 104 kilograms. So Triumph have definitely come to play here because that is KTM numbers for weight. High class suspension with KYB 48mm forks. You've got Brembo brakes. So they've definitely thought about this bike being used in competition. I'm not going to speak too closely to the specifications. I'm not an MX guy. I haven't really ridden any MX bikes, so I can't directly compare my experiences to this bike, so it would be meaningless to everyone here. But as I will always say, this is Triumph's first step into proper off-road in a long time. What I'm hoping here is that we see the MX bikes come out. Then Triumph have said they're going to be releasing enduro motorcycles, so bikes to compete against the 350 EXC, the 500 EXC, which means you'll get an enduro bike, another option as an ultralight adventure bike or an ultralight dual sport if you do the right modifications, which is very exciting in itself. But the next logical step from there, given that Triumph already make adventure bikes and by then would already have released MX and enduro bikes, hopefully they'll look at the dual sport market. It is a Hail Mary and a far-fetched thought. I can't help but let my mind wander towards the dual sport category. It's where my heart lies. So I'd really love to see Triumph one day releasing a dual sport, a true dual sport with reliability, lightweight, off-road capability, but reasonably affordable. I'm not really fussed what they make, whether it's something like a 300cc dual sport, a 450 dual sport, a 650 dual sport. I think we'd all be very happy to see a new model in any of those capacities. Like I said, it's a bit of a Hail Mary, but it's a small little hope that I hold, and it's just great to see a manufacturer moving into a new segment with fresh ideas and a fresh concept. So great to see it from Triumph. I'll be watching closely over the years as they release more and more off-road motorcycles. If you liked the video, hit that like button, consider subscribing and joining this fantastic off-road community. And as always, don't forget to stay shiny side up